In this episode of The Fifth Domain, I'm sitting down with Prescott Pym, a global cybersecurity veteran with more than 25 years of experience leading security operations centers and cyber threat intelligence programs across Australia, Japan, Switzerland, and the US. Prescott shares war stories and hard-won lessons from decades in the trenches, what actually works in building and running high-performing security teams, and where we keep getting it wrong. From burnout and broken workflows to the real-world limits of AI and automation, this conversation dives into the realities of modern SOC operations and how we can build security programs that actually deliver value. Prescott, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thanks so much, Matt. Really appreciate you having me on.
Prescott, a lot of experience, a lot of background, diverse backgrounds across industry and countries. Tell us your journey. Where did you start in cybersecurity? How did you end up to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think the first interest for me in cybersecurity was at university where, happened upon a subject and thought, oh my God, this is what I want to do for a career. I think it'd be so interesting and so varied. Got through the graduate program at the Bureau of Stats in Canberra and then landed a developer job and did that for about 6 months. Like, I don't really want to do that my entire life, to be honest. But I managed to get into the security team just around the time I think the I Love You virus hit back in 2000. So that was the burning introduction into the cyber stream for me. But haven't looked back since that point and have worked, since then through federal government, enterprise, global work, consulting, and now at Cosive, where I'm principal consultant doing SOC and CTI work.
And so for a lot of listeners are sort of, getting into new SOC managers or et cetera, getting into cybersecurity operations, from your journey through security operations and managing teams and working in different programs around threat intelligence, what's your key takeaways? What's your key lessons that you would give to these people starting to actually manage operational teams?
Probably the biggest learning for me is that you're constantly learning in this field. So making sure that you're keeping across what's going on in terms of the cyber landscape, managing people and technology and process, and networking with peers to stay plugged into what's happening around not just Australia but around the world. They're probably the three big takeaways, I'd say, in a nutshell.
And that's one of the key things at Fifth Domain we talk about. It's a continuous learning journey, right? So there's technologies are changing, threats are changing, the geopolitical landscape is changing. So always something new to learn and something new to develop. And I think to really work in cyber operations, that's what you got to be comfortable with. You got to be able to then, be out of your comfort zone. You got to be comfortable out of your comfort zone, really, don't you? And then you've got to be able to then learn new things, try things out, back yourselves, and etc. like that. So, absolutely, it's great to have someone of your experience to be able to tell everyone, hey, it's a fluid environment. You need to draw on networks, you need to draw on your own experiences and other people to then sort of do the job basically. Yeah, great. So, Prescott. We've talked a little bit around in previous podcasts around measures and metrics around how does a SOC manager measure are we winning or losing? Are we doing a good job? Is it just counting tickets? Is it something else? I think, and some of the feedback or observations I've had within industry is that often because security and cyber is very opaque, it's hard to understand and see the impacts of your work. Often we basically just count what we can see, even though it may not be relevant to or linkage back to the the business activities, and you wouldn't really be able to understand what is the impact we're trying to achieve here. But within cyber, within security operations, what are some of the key metrics that you look to judge? Are we winning or losing?
Yeah, great question, Matt. And it's something a lot of SOC teams are really challenged with because usually it's like, there's a burning fire and you just got to put out the nearest thing, constantly, switching context and to different tasks. I think where a lot of organizations go wrong is they just start growing these programs really organically, and sometimes that's just the nature of it. You're adding more tools and more capabilities. There's more regulations, more business that people are getting into. So a lot of it can grow organically, and sometimes you just got to take a bit of a step back and look from a high level. What are the risks we're trying to solve? How's the program going to work? What does it cover? What are your crown jewels? All those sorts of things. So, starting back at the strategy layer and working out, for each level down in the organization, what are you measuring strategically? What are you measuring operationally and very, very tactically? Would be where I'd start with things. Sometimes it's really easy to do that in-house because you've got a lot of context about what's going on in the organisation. Sometimes you need an extra set of eyes to come in and just give you that fresh view of what's going on in the organisation. So that's something that I'm really keen to help organisations within that level. In terms of metrics, starting at the top of the organisation, we're really talking about risk management, and that's what's going to get a really big buy-in from executive to help fund programs. So how are you making a realistic impact to the amount of risk that the organisation is willing to take, and those sort of metrics at that sort of level. At the operational level, looking at what are the costs to run a security operations centre, how many staff are you using, what are their skills, where do you need to invest in technology platforms, and then probably only then down at the very tactical level about false positive rates and true positive rates, and how your detections are working in the environment. So yeah, that's probably a bit of an encapsulation of all the things you've got to think about. It's not a single thing, and starting at the very end of the process is probably not going to get you the right results. It's going to link all the way back up to your overall strategy.
That's great, and I think you touched on a really important point about linking it back to the business, and sometimes there are challenges in doing that from both sides. Where sometimes SOC managers, they've come up through the ranks, they're technologists, they know how to do the craft really well, they've led a team, but they sort of struggle at the ability to then link what they're doing to higher business objectives, to be able to think in terms of capability level, to be able to then go, this investment area is return on investment, etc., like that, to then really communicate, to their senior managers, exactly why they should be investing money and their time into security operations. Have you had that sort of experience before? Encompasses those sorts of challenges before, Prescott? And if so, what are some of the lessons or advice you would provide for people who are struggling to do that right now?
Yeah, I think traditionally the cybersecurity function has grown out of IT as an organisation, and we're starting to see that over time, change in where the CISO or the security operations function lives within an organisation. More often it's becoming more like a part of the risk, so falling under the chief risk officer, for instance. So that has a really big impact on, if you're a SOC manager and you're looking to, implement an effective program, being able to not just be technical, but also be business savvy. And that's one reason why I went out and got an MBA, because just saw that convergence of business and technical and needing to understand both worlds. It's probably not a really easy job to be a CISO at the moment and have to juggle, the technical programs of work, but then, be a risk mitigator, be a business person. It's a lot to have to work through on a daily basis, and I think that's where we see, particularly in that senior security manager sort of CISO, there's a lot of burnout because feel like the weight of the world's just on your shoulders a bit.
Absolutely, and you've led into the next question really well around team and burnout. We hear a lot within security operations industry that around burnout, people are introducing wellness programs in order to manage that and not have people leave because they may enjoy the job, but the tempo and intensity is not for their life. And the issue with that is that potentially you lose a lot of corporate knowledge and capability within the organization, not because they don't like the job or capable of it, but because they burn out. So I guess, have you seen this in your career? And I guess, what are some of the early signs that, SOC managers and team leads need to look out for? And then, potentially, like, what are some of the contingencies that you can put in place to help manage that?
Yeah, definitely seen that over my time working 24/7 around the clock. Even myself personally, it's been hugely challenging. I think one of the key advice I would give is you've really got to put a lot of research into your recruiting process and the types of people who are going to be going into those roles. We've had a lot of success over the years looking at people who have like transitioned careers from, say, nursing or other areas where there's really high intensity pressure to perform and be switched on, and being able to context switch, work a variety of different hours is not easy, and not everyone's built or set up for that. So making sure that when you're hiring someone that they are very clear on what the expectations are around the role, and that they're able to really quickly think and prioritize on the fly about what's going on. That can be really, really stressful for different personality types, or like for me, that was pretty natural. I came with the territory and I was easily able to adapt. But yeah, and to your point before about putting systems in place to wrap around people, that's really, really important, making sure they've got some downtime and some rest. Having managed 24/7 rosters, it's not easy to build into that the types of flexibility that you need when you're looking after the security analysts. And that places a lot of pressure on the rest of the team to help manage it as a whole. But I think it's a bit of a team sport, and if you build the right culture in place, then people will want to wrap their arms around each other and help them out in those situations, sometimes go above and beyond to make sure that the team and customers as a whole are successful.
And what do you look for? So there's cybersecurity is a hot career decision at the moment. That's exciting. There's we hear about the skills gap, the talent gap. Anecdotally stories of great salaries initially as graduates and etc. But also that the education sector is not setting up graduates, students with the skills, but also potentially some of the mindsets that are required, and really what the operating environment looks like. So, within the medical profession, we see that medicine students, they do placements, they work in hospitals, they do these shifts, these graveyard shifts, to understand of how the intensity and they need to operate and function, and some of the very visceral experiences that they will occur within these environments. Do you see a bit of that lacking within the cyber industry, and is it something that should be bled back into the education and the development and the training, phases of someone's journey, or is it something that should just you come in and then now you start your trade training? It should be left to the employers to provide that experience for you.
Yeah, I think it's always going to come into a couple of different buckets with that, to your point as well. I'm really enthusiastic about what the higher education system can do to help prepare people to move into these types of fields, work with some universities on their and TAFE colleges on their programs to make sure that they're relevant in the modern environment. It's a huge challenge to sort of replicate that type of environments in security operations centres, but we can start to involve some of the concepts in those coursewares to try and set them up to be successful. The trouble with, I guess, security operations is it's a pretty vast field. You've got to be across networking, applications, cloud computing, AI and LM more these days as well. So there's a lot of different technologies that you need to be across in small and different ways. And I think as uh, you know these people grow in their roles, there's opportunity for specialization. And I think that's one of the real strengths of working in a security operations center is you get to learn a lot and you can sort of dive a bit deeper into areas that you really find interesting to provide that capability to the overall team.
Coming around to automation and SOC automation, and I've seen, probably, almost 10 years ago, the emergence of SOAR, emerging, and, it was around, they would remove need for analysts and so forth. Now we're, getting the emergence of AI, into, and everyone's, unfairly maybe saying, but, whitewashing their security technologies. And we go to conferences. I remember going to RSA last year in San Francisco, and it was the same marketing as it was in the year before, but it said now with AI, on the it's now fries with that. So, talk to me about automation, how you've used automation, if it's logical or at the SOAR level, and then potentially now with the emergence of large language models, automation, interpreting data, etc., like that. Where has it gone to date, and where do you see this going over the next sort of 5-10 years?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting time at the moment. Sort of think of it akin to when we started to get 3D television. Everyone get the goggles or the frames that you could wear at home and no one's watching 3D at home these days still, even though there's a huge marketing push for it. So I think some of those have been a bit hit and miss over the years. When SOARs first started deploying, I know we used them extensively in the SOC I was working in at the time. And I think that the target around trying to save the really, really repetitive behavior that drives SOC analysts insane, just having to do the same thing over and over again, it's a definition of insanity, right? So being able to do some of the automated enrichment and presenting alerts that are a lot more complete to analysts to be able to make decisions. I think we still need the humans to be able to make those decisions, but to be able to support them with as much evidence as possible will make for a better outcome. You're right around, everyone's got AI or little AI stars that appear next to every product feature set at the moment. I think we're starting to turn the corner a little bit where some of this is actually going to become really useful. I think the AI models and LLMs getting a lot better and able to replicate a lot of the information that the team are doing. There's some really interesting work in the agent space to be able to, have an interactive session as if you were a SOC analyst looking into this sort of stuff. So for the SOC managers out there, I'd be keeping a close eye on what's going on. But automating just for the sake of automating or AI is not going to help unless you've got really solid processes and tooling in place. I've seen automation go bad and generate a lot of load and DDoS, the service effectively. So you still got to do the basic groundwork to get everything set up to be able to leverage these types of capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. And there's I saw a framework once around how technology does one of two things. It either makes an expert better, faster at their job, or it allows a less expert person to be able to do the same level of job. And I think I see AI in the first case being able to help an expert do their job better and faster, because in a way you still have to interrogate what the AI is telling you, and you have to sense check and fact check and make sure it's not hallucinating and it's relevant to the context and have that explainability. Just like if you're an analyst was writing a ticket and making a determination about something, they would still have to include their evidence and notes as to why they came to that conclusion. So, it's similar to AI. I guess, where do you see, or do you see the point where, within SOAR, it was never really the AR, it was just the security orchestration, not the automated response. Do you see a point where AI is doing that automated response? And if so, what are the conditions under which CISOs, SOC managers would start to accept potentially some of the risk around the AI making a bad decision, but with the benefits of speed and basically speed and precision.
You're right that security orchestration has been the real focus, and getting the response actions has been really difficult to integrate all the different types of technologies. I saw an interesting report recently from Splunk, I think it was, where some organizations have 90 plus different tools, that security tools in their stack, that they're trying to integrate. So I think doing a lot of work to simplify your core compute stack and your security program is really beneficial to start to get to the point where you can do some response actions. So that's, I think something that we're seeing a lot at the moment is, some really recent clients that we work with just had a really simple, effective stack, and they were able to run their SOC, just business hours, and be able to do some of the automation and response out of hours, not getting that many calls, but just with a really tight product suite, they were able to eliminate a whole bunch of analyst work, so they could focus on the really important things, because funding for security programs can be a bit of a challenge too. So the more work you can do to make life easier and sort the wheat from the chaff a little bit, the more effective security outcomes you're going to have. And for this organisation who went through and implemented this stack, it wasn't we're replacing humans. To your point, it's augmenting the capability so we can get a better outcome.
Yeah, I really like that, where it's not replacing, it's helping analysts do some of the not so much mundane work, but the very repetitive work, very structured work, in order to then reserve them to do that, high level critical analysis and creative thinking and so forth towards the bigger risks. So absolutely similar to the way that I guess, you and I probably use, AI for, generate generative things, and, rather than spending time spell checking or whatever else, we can use AI around it. So in a way, it's sort of, spell checker for, cyber operations. So one question I do want to get your perspective on is around, as the security industry and cyber operations industry is transforming, where organizations are facing new threats, new challenges from geopolitical actors, technology disruptions, workforce changes in the way people work. What is the role of the SOC manager, or the cyber operations manager, the leader, in benefiting, or I guess helping steer and steward that capability, the cyber operations capability, into the future? What is their role? What will the organisation look to them in terms of leadership, of things to do or decisions to make going forward?
Yeah, I think increasingly the SOC managers are acting, like you said, in much more of a global space and needing to understand what the threat landscape is. And that's very hard to do by yourself. A lot of SOC teams that have grown organically are probably just really focused internally on what's happening in the organisation. So I think it's really critical that SOC managers are investing in things like cyber threat intelligence, understanding the threat landscape, and there's solutions out there. You can do some of it through OSINT and open source tooling, or you can go through and purchase services around that sort of stuff. But bringing some of that external focus in, and being able to map that to the risk program within the organisation is increasingly where I'm going to see SOC managers wanting to play. Less so, managing the actual incident response process, because, like as we just talked to, I think a lot of that is going to, be impacted through automation and response actions, so that the leadership can actually focus on what's the business objectives, how can we make our business more successful through managing the situation in the context of where we are sitting in the global threat landscape.
Yeah, it's quite a job, isn't it? To being able to have to, think about business operations and business contexts, like yourself, getting an MBA, having that business brain, but also having that ability to understand and think in terms of ones and zeros, so to speak. Be able to see the matrix, so see those two things, be able to then translate between the two and be the nexus, because one influences the other. so much. So, it's going to be a tough job for, these SOC managers going forward, but a very important role. And so it's great that, you can appear here and help them, come through the next generation of SOC managers and support them. So being able to look at, recruits and who you're bringing through and make sure it's not just about their qualifications or their skills, but actually do they want to work in the operating environment? And again, your perspectives on, AI and automation, really around, hey, it's getting so, the volumes of attack, ferociousness of the attacks and the volume are getting so much, maybe we use automation for, just handling sort of the more predictable, repeatable tasks within security operations centers. So Prescott, for our listeners, how can they contact you? What would you like to, talk to people about if they want to reach out and, leverage your expertise and what you do in your current role and also professionally, individually? How can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, sure. So got a reasonable presence on LinkedIn, so happy for anyone to hit me up there or ask for a coffee meeting. Love doing those sorts of things and the small informal networking with people. You can email me prescott.pym@cosive.com. And like I said earlier, we're really enthusiastic around helping SOC teams and CTI teams be successful in their organisations.
That's great. Thanks very much, Prescott, for being on the Fifth Domain. Good luck in fighting the battle.
Thanks, Matt.